The following program is to provide entertainment and information. It is not considered to be any legal or investment advice.
Good morning, appraisers. Let's talk some real estate. You're listening to the Voice of Appraisal, the #1 appraisal podcast in all of America that always brings you the latest news and information from the front lines of the real estate market. Anything from market conditions, appraisal regulations, cryptocurrencies, big bank news. Folks, you have a question, we have all of your answers. We are the one-stop source for all of your real estate appraisal needs. If you want to be in the know, you've definitely tuned in to the right show. I'm your host, Phil Crawford. Happy to have all of you here with us today. Kevin, how are you, my friend? How are you?
We are back, and
yes.
I understand you had a very busy summer.
I had a very busy summer. It was fun to watch my son play travel ball for probably the last season. And I'm also a property flipper, fix and flipper type of guy.
I always knew you were a flipper.
Flipper. I'm a legal flipper, Kevin. I'm a legal flipper. I try to flip at least 2 or 3 properties a year if I can. And maybe I'll add some to my portfolio as well. But I'll tell you right now, it's been a very busy summer because no one's showing up to go to work right now. Okay, there's nobody showing up. If you are a younger person and you want to make millions and millions of dollars, I highly recommend you going into a trade. Plumbing, electrician, welding, anything along those lines. Get into the trades because there is millions upon millions of dollars to be made. Also, get a good education if you can in robotics. Learn robotics, okay? Because the C3PO robot is coming this way, I'd say within probably the next 10 years, all right? Not the R2-D2. The R2-D2 is a piece of worthless droid robot. It's a trash can. But the C3PO, that's the robot that you're going to have to learn how to fix, get underneath that crawl space, get up above the attic, really preserve your body over the years so you can be more and more productive. But get out there, get into those trades. Those of you out there that are young, I keep on hearing all of these stories about how the youth is depressed right now. It's sad, actually, how they're depressed. And I think, some of the coronavirus had to do with that. Listen, your future is very bright. Your demographic is very strong. You've got a lot of consumers that are going to be needing you. Get out there and make your money, and you'll be just fine.
So, Phil, before we get into the show, because I know we're probably going to tick some people off.
Yeah, we probably are. We're going to piss some people off this time, but go ahead. Yeah, Kevin.
I have a question for you. With the way that the economy is looking right now,
yes.
What do you think's going to happen with real estate?
With real estate, it's up in the air because I've heard nothing but positive things, especially Moody's just recently came out and said that Cincinnati, my beloved and beautiful and wonderful Cincinnati, is going to be just fine for the next 2 years. The secret's out. Everybody's coming to Cincinnati. They're buying in Cincinnati. The only thing you have to worry about is that I want you to I'm going to say it, and I want you to just keep repeating it in your head. Repeat it over and over and over again for the next 6 months. The market will die with the DTI. The market will die with the DTI. Yes, just say that over and over again. When you wake up in the morning, the market will die with the DTI. The market will die with the DTI. And what that means is that the real estate market, will get into trouble if Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac's debt-to-income ratio that they're using in their current loan products is, in fact, wrong. It is not matching the risk assessment of today's world. Mark Calabria, who used to be in charge of FHFA, said on a recent podcast that the DTI over at Fannie and Freddie is only designed for a 2% inflation rate. We are burning at 8% CPI right now, which means that a lot of those loans, we're not talking about value here, we're talking about ability to repay the loan. A lot of those loans can be in some serious trouble if their debt-to-income ratio numbers are off. So the market will die with the DTI. And speaking of Fannie and Freddie, Kevin, we can't forget about Fannie and Freddie on the show. We always got to bring out Fannie and Freddie. We love Fannie and Freddie. The GSEs, love them so much. Some of you out there probably have some bizometers that are starting to slow down. You're not getting as much work in, maybe having some trouble paying the bills, taking care of your kids, things like that. Well, that's where those appraisal waivers come in, Kevin. That's where the appraisal waivers come in. And that's why exclusively at the Voice of Appraisal podcast, and you can go to www.voiceofappraisal.com, we have a new product line available for real estate appraisers.
What is it?
The hashtag I love appraisal waivers product line. We have that product line available. We've got hashtag I love appraisal waivers t-shirts, hashtag I love appraisal waivers coffee mugs, hashtag I love appraisal waivers beach towels. Whatever you want, you can go to www.voiceofappraisal.com and show your support. Show your support for those appraisal waivers out there while you're having a difficult time paying off your bills and taking care of your children. Show your support by getting a hashtag I love Appraisal Waivers t-shirt today.
I do have to say, this shirt does look kind of snazzy.
It's a snazzy-looking shirt. It's a sexy shirt, Kevin. It's a sexy coffee mug. It's a sexy beach towel. And it's got a sexy message, and that is hashtag I love Appraisal Waivers. And by the way, all of the proceeds, net proceeds, I should say, from the sale of the hashtag I love Appraisal Waivers t-shirts and coffee mugs, all those proceeds go to Kevin. Kevin, because on his invoice for his producer invoice, he is actually giving me a gas surcharge because it takes a little bit more money to get down to the radio station.
Yes.
So it's all going over to Kevin. That's where the money's flowing if you need to know. But get your hashtag I love Appraisal Waivers t-shirt today. They are phenomenal, and it'll be fun. And you know what? The holidays are coming up. The holidays are coming up. There's not a lot of gifts under the tree because the appraisal waivers are out there and the interest rates are going up. Just give that t-shirt and that coffee mug, and the kids will fully understand what in the hell is going on and why the hell Santa Claus didn't show up this year. So we've got a lot of news and information to go over, Kevin. And I'll tell you, I am so excited about this. We're going to talk today about a lot of very powerful women in the world. And the first powerful woman I want to talk about is, in fact, my dear friend, Lori Noble. Lori Noble has a new job. She is no longer going to be an active real estate appraiser full time. She has a new position at the Center for the Study of Occupational Regulation at the West Virginia University. It's called the NE Center for the Study of Occupational Regulation. In other words, Lori Noble is going to be looking into occupational licensing abuses in the appraisal space. Can you believe this? Can you believe that she's going to be looking in this?
Congratulations, Lori.
This is just unbelievable, especially Lori Noble coming from West Virginia, having to deal with the West Virginia Real Estate Appraisers Board for all of those years. Lori had to battle those guys all the time. She's got that dude down there that was sitting on the appraisers upgrades board and would always turn people down because he didn't want new competition coming into his market. There are 55 jurisdictions in this country when it comes to the way that we're regulated. 55 jurisdictions go in 55 different directions. They all have state boards. They all have competitors on state boards. They have no idea what the antitrust is, how to handle antitrust, any of that stuff. They've never done antitrust reviews on any of their boards. It is basically out of control. And Lori's going to be there now to start to dig deep and to see what is going on inside of these 55 jurisdictions, how they're regulated, how they use USPAP, how they use the disciplinary matrix that the Appraisal Foundation puts out. For all of you out there, if you haven't taken USPAP this year, take the McKissick Online USPAP. For the very first time that I can remember, the McKissick Online USPAP discusses the disciplinary matrix. The disciplinary matrix. So that is the matrix that 55 jurisdictions in this country use to take you out of business. And guess who puts it out? The Appraisal Foundation. Through their investigator training courses, the Appraisal Foundation create a disciplinary matrix that they send out to all these 55 jurisdictions. And of course, they all get together at the Aero Conference once a year. The Aero Conference, I think there's going to be there's going to be a microscope on what's going on with the regulators throughout the country. Because I'll tell you something, there's some people in this world that are high up. And I mean, I'm talking high up, that are pissed off at the way that the appraisal profession is regulated. They're pissed off at the way that the appraisers get their upgrades. They're pissed off at the way that the appraisers pass their examinations and what is in those examinations. This profession, you think it's got a microscope right now? You just get ready because it's going to get worse and worse as time goes on.
Well,
yes,
right.
Kevin.
Well, what really gets me is there's 55 jurisdictions.
That's right.
And 55 set of rules.
It's the antitrust issue. It's the competitors on those state boards. How long have we been doing this podcast for? 2014, right? How many times have I said the problem when it comes to the appraisal profession, the way it's set up, is the competitor against you on that state board. Right. And that's going to be a big problem. And Lori's going to look into it. She's going to look into it heavily in West Virginia. She knows the bull that took place in West Virginia. And she's also going to take a deep dive in what happened in South Dakota. As most of you know, there's been some issues out there in South Dakota, especially when it comes to appraisers getting licensed. There's only 400 real estate appraisers in the state of South Dakota. That's it. I mean, they're having a little problem there when it comes to new appraisers coming on board. Of course, the big news story that recently came out was Cassidy Peters, who's Governor Noem's daughter. Everybody said she had a problem getting her appraiser's license, right? They always said, well, she was having trouble with her exam and all this stuff.
Right.
That's bull. That's BS. What was going on was is there was a botched review. There was actually, Kevin, a recent article about this at the South Dakota Public Broadcasting radio station. This is by Lee, is it Strublinger? How do you say that, Kevin? Strublinger. That's who it is. Lee Strublinger put out an article talking about the Department of Labor and Regulation in South Dakota. Now, as most of you know, there's a massive shortage of appraisers in South Dakota, and North Dakota for that matter, too, because North Dakota had to go to Jim Park over at the Appraisal Subcommittee and ask for some regulatory relief because they didn't have enough appraisers up there. Again, it's an issue of competition is what it is. So what they're trying to do in South Dakota is to bring more and more people into it. So the article goes, the Department of Labor and Regulation is looking into streamlining the process for those seeking an appraiser's license. The push comes in part by Governor Kristi Noem, who says the state needs to address a shortage of real estate appraisers in the state. For years, the state worked to develop a first-in-nation training program that would let a supervisor train at least 20 appraisers instead of just one. The state received a federal grant of $120,000 to encourage appraisers to help train entry-level apprentices. Now, listen, that $120,000, that was just brought up at the PAVE report hearings in the Senate in front of Jim Park, because a couple of those senators are like, wait, I think it was a Montana senator. Wow. He's like, wait a second, what are you guys doing? Because we don't have enough appraisers in these rural counties. And Jim Park brought up, oh, by the way, in South Dakota, we're giving money to South Dakota. It's been a problem for a very long time. Amber Mulder, who oversees the appraisal certification program with the Department of Labor, wants to revise the program before it's implemented. Mulder recently told a legislative committee that the current required training hours exceeded the federal requirements. There's a lot of things in South Dakota that get exceeded. Under that whole Sherry Brim, you know what she did, right? In order for you to be an appraiser in South Dakota, you had to pass the licensed residential examination to become an appraiser before you went to school to become an appraiser.
What?
Yes. So you had to pass that exam, and then you went to school to learn how to pass the exam. It would be akin to saying, you can go to law school after you pass the bar exam.
Makes no
sense at all. No sense at all. And Cassidy Peters, when she was on the show, she said that she failed it. I mean, the first time around, she failed it because she had no idea what was going to be on it. Second time around, she got it. Mm-hmm. But again, that's ridiculous. I think they got rid of that in South Dakota after Sherry Brim got out of there, but I'm not sure yet. So it goes back into it. She wants to bring the licensing hour requirement basically to federal guidelines, but there's a lot of critics on this. It says here, critics say that federal minimums are designed for one-on-one training and not a class of 20. Now this is interesting. This is Craig Steinle. So for those of you that don't know who Craig Steinle is with the Professional Appraisers Association of South Dakota. He's a big guy. Okay. He's a big guy in the SD. He's also going to be the next president of the Appraisal Institute. He worries lenders will not work with appraisers who have such limited direct experience. Go ahead and play the soundbite of Craig Steinle in this interview from South Dakota Public Radio.
What we've said to the department, what we've said to the federal oversight group is, if you think 6 months is enough, then show us the banks and credit unions that are lining up to hire these people.
So in other words, Craig Steinle is saying that if you think that 6 months is enough to train these people, show us the banks that are out there hiring those people. Is he out of his mind? They're hiring him left and right. I was about to say, all of these new companies out there, all of the venture capital companies that have all of the gurus out there that are sitting there going, we are here to become larger than CoreLogic. We're here to become the best real estate appraiser company and make sure. They're hiring people that have this experience. What the hell is Steinle thinking? Yes, Craig, they're going to hire those people. Of the 400 people, of the 400 appraisers that are in South Dakota today, if you go online, you can see kind of where their home base is. A lot of them don't have a home base in South Dakota. Some of them are North Dakota appraisers. A lot of them are out-of-state appraisers. So what's that telling me is that this whole situation, this whole mess with Sherry Brim and all this BS that came out of that story has to do with one thing, and that is that she made it too damn hard for people to get a license in that state. And also, it probably was a little bit easier through reciprocity, through another state, to become a South Dakota appraiser than to be a quote-unquote homegrown real estate appraiser in South Dakota. So the other thing that they want to do, besides lower some of these requirements on the hours, is also to get rid of the work sample review. This is Craig Steinle. Craig Steinle says he's also concerned about the proposal that removes a work sample review of appraisals for those who want to upgrade their license through the training program. And that's it right there. That's it right there. When you implement such a thing as a work sample review in the way that Sherry Brim implemented it, where she would give it to a reviewer, and she testified under oath, she never gave a due date on the review. So the situation with Cassidy Peters, she had to wait around for 12 months to get the quote-unquote work sample review back from her reviewer. And he took 12 months to deliver a review that he said had USPAP errors in it, right? So Cassidy, she fixed the reviews, and he came back and he said, I found more problems, which means at that time that he screwed up the review. He was in violation of the uniform standards of professional appraisal practice because he found additional USPAP errors. See, this is the problem when you get into USPAP. You get into a document that is open for interpretation. Anybody out there can find anything wrong with it, no matter what. They can weaponize USPAP, and if they don't like you or they want to keep you out of this business, or they say, hey, look, you know what? I think there's a competitor coming into play here. They're going to keep you out by using the uniform standards. For those of you that are not familiar with the appraisal industry, and you guys need to understand this right now, we are filled with a lot of pale, stale, middle-aged male, passive-aggressive, narcissistic people. And if they're coming after you, and I've been on the other side of it, if they're coming after you in a review, you have no defense. You have no defense because USPAP is always open for interpretation. This is what they want to get rid of in South Dakota. This is what Lori Noble is going to be looking at, because this is a big issue. When you are brought up in front of a state board, the state board stands in judgment against you. You have competitors standing in judgment against you that can basically come in and say, I'm going to interpret USPAP any which way I want to. It doesn't matter.
I never thought I would say this, Phil.
Yeah.
Because you know how I am in that. But hearing more and more about this is total bullshit.
It is. Do you want to become an appraiser? Let me ask you, do you want to become an appraiser in this environment?
No.
In this environment?
No.
I'm telling you, Kevin, it was a mess out there from the word go, especially when this entire story came out. This is very similar to what's going on in West Virginia. I'm receiving emails from concerns of people in Texas, Indiana. I mean, we've got some serious issues out there when it comes to the way that these boards are set up. Okay? Now, if you want to take a look at this story, you can probably say, well, Phil is covering this from a right-sided political spectrum slant. Fine. Let's go over to the Democratic side. Let's go to the left side of the political spectrum, and let's see how they are reacting to the real estate appraisal profession as well. See, that's the great thing about the profession right now. It's wonderful. It's doing something that I didn't think could be done in 2022, and that is bringing the country together in bipartisanship with both sides of the political spectrum coming together in agreement with their hatred towards us. That's basically what it is. We have the Appraisal Foundation. We have the Appraisal Institute. We have all of our wonderful, pale, stale, middle-aged male leadership schmucks out there to thank for both sides of the political spectrum hammering down on us. Let's go ahead and talk about what happened the other day when it comes to Marcia Fudge. Marcia Fudge is the HUD secretary. So she's from Cleveland, so I need to give an update to Secretary Fudge. Secretary Fudge, if you need me in any way, shape, manner, or form, I'm at info@voiceforappraisal.com, info@voiceforappraisal.com. I'm right down the road, right down 71, just 20 miles north of Cincinnati. If you ever need to discuss anything, we have the solutions at the Voice of Appraisal podcast. But she was on CNN the other day, and she was talking about these issues with the appraisal bias and appraiser racism. There was a recent news story that just broke from the New York Times about how an appraiser went out to a house, black couple, and value came in at like $400,000. The house was whitewashed, and then the value came in at $700,000. So Ms. Fudge went on to CNN, and she was extremely upset about it. Okay, and she's upset at the way that this entire operation is set up, that the way that the appraisal profession is set up. And let's go ahead and listen to what she had to say on CNN when it comes to these racial biased issues inside the appraisal profession.
It is an absolute violation of the law. It is a violation of the fair housing law. It is a violation of the lending law. And so what HUD is doing, and what we have done already, is we were tasked by the president to look at appraisal bias, because what we know is that it used to be that these things happen only in red line communities, but now it is pervasive. It is happening everywhere. And we determined that part of the problem
Here we go.
was how appraisers are trained, who is in the appraisal industry, and how they are governed. And so what we did in March was to present a report, showed how deeply this whole bias situation is across this country.
So how they're trained, who's in the appraisal profession, but most importantly, what is that? How they're governed. Governed. So that's very, very important, guys. I want you guys to understand that, how appraisers are governed. Now, just recently, that's Secretary Fudge. Now, hold on to that for just a minute, okay? Just recently, the ASA, the American Society of Appraisers, came out with a presentation called Emerging Topics in Appraisal Bias. Emerging Topics in Appraisal Bias. And one of the presenters was an appraiser from St. Louis by the name of Doug Potts. Now, they're discussing the issues of historical redlining in certain neighborhoods and how those neighborhoods have been damaged over the years because of the redlining issue. And they're creating a concept called restorative appraisal. Now, you and I, Kevin, on the last show, determined that we would consider this to be social depreciation. We use the term social depreciation of land based on past and present racial and discriminatory practices.
Right.
That's our complete last show. We based that off of Dr. Andre Perry's book. Now, during this presentation, Kevin, there was a slide that showed a comping triangle. The historical way that appraisers subjectively would choose comparables based upon a comping triangle. Location, location, location would be number one. I want you to listen to Doug Potts break down the comping triangle, the subjective comping triangle that we use today, and then I want him to break down what he is proposing as a new comping triangle. So go ahead and play Mr. Potts.
Second item is the comparability triangle. So if you think about a comp, there's our subject property, and we typically triangulate our comparables on the basis of three fundamental areas.
Three fundamentals. Here we go.
Typically, we have always prioritized location as the most important thing to recognize.
Location.
Based upon primarily guidance and rules given to us that have become kind of codified in our brain that you can't go beyond certain neighborhood boundaries, can't do those things. Yes, you're allowed to do that by Fannie and Freddie. And I should tell you that Fannie and Freddie are already, from what I hear from people who know, are already thinking about shifting those definitions in response to complaints that perhaps the system has been too closed.
Too close.
So with that in mind, we've typically prioritized location, then features, and certainly recentness of sale.
Location,
yes,
features, recent sale.
Location. Yes, we can stretch recentness. But the problem is that very often, especially by kind of doctrinaire, form filler type reviewers and AMCs, you can't make any headway.
Good job,
Mr.
Potts.
You should have that latitude. So with that in mind, how do we rethink the comparability triangle?
Okay, here's a new triangle.
We should, very first and foremost, deprioritize location. Not throw it out, just change its focus.
Okay.
And then talk about amenities and features and so on. Adjust the triangle. Put features first. Look for similar housing stock regardless of location. And with that, then we can even talk about expanding the triangle. Expand the location concept. Expand the time frame. Look at more flexible location alternatives.
So he's basically saying at that time, don't put location first. Don't prioritize it.
Right.
Prioritize features. Then expand the comparable searches, expand the time, expand all of these things, right? The issue that you run into is that if you do that, because remember, an appraisal is an opinion of value, right? It's an opinion.
Right.
So you do that and you back it up and you say, I've done my homework, and you basically tell me what you did and tell me how you did it. If you put that argument in front of any of these 55 jurisdictions with these reviewers and these competitors, they will crush your ass. They will suspend your license. You will lose your license, and you may even be turned in to Homeland Security or some other federal agency for mortgage fraud. Go ahead and play the comments by Secretary Fudge at the very beginning of that soundbite. I want you to listen to what she says when it comes to bias in the appraisal profession. Is it a fair housing issue or is it an industry issue? Go ahead and play that really quick, Kevin.
It is an absolute violation of the law. It is a violation of the fair housing law. It is a violation of the lending law.
Stop. So it is a violation of the fair housing law, and it is a violation of lending laws. So if you do the second triangle, that could put you in a position to not violate fair housing, but to violate lending laws. If you do the first triangle that he's talking about, Mr. Potts is talking about, that puts you as an appraiser in a position to not violate lending laws, but to possibly violate fair housing laws. So as you can see, you have no way to win in either direction.
So it's a no-win situation.
It's a no-win scenario, and it's unfair for real estate appraisers to have to live and to work under that scrutiny. We are open to communication for all things. I broke down on the last show social depreciation of land based on past and present, racial and discriminatory practices because of a redlining issue. I can break that down. And even though I like Mr. Potts' argument, he's an MAI, which means that he gives a wonderful presentation, but I think his scope of work's a little off. But that's common when it comes to an MAI. It is unfair for us as professionals to be put in the middle where we have a banking system saying you have to do it one way, and then a fair housing laws saying you have to consider it a different way. Both of those triangles puts the appraiser in a bad position. And I'll tell you right now, Secretary Fudge, if you want to get down to the bottom of this issue, you look at all of these 55 jurisdictions and you look at the way that they regulate their appraisers and you look at the way that they discipline their appraisers. I know a very good appraiser. I can't mention their name. They have asked not to ever be mentioned on the Voice of Appraisal podcast. But a damn good appraiser that lost their license for 1 year because they found a better way to value certain features of a property, and their state board, filled with their competitors, shut them down, said, we don't do it that way, and they took away their license for an entire year. So do you see what I'm saying? It's not fair. It's just as simple and easy as that. I'm going to call it like it is. We need to have more of a just system when it comes to the way that we are regulated and trained. Let me ask you one other question, Kevin. This is really serious. Okay, this is a serious question, okay?
Okay.
Do you have a crazy friend?
I have
several. You have several? Okay. I have a crazy friend. And if you think you're her, don't worry about it. You're not, because she doesn't listen to my show. But I have a crazy friend. And I love my crazy friend. And my crazy friend has been my friend for a very, very long time. And I know how to handle her. And I handle her in, pieces, right? But she's crazy. Now, when I introduce my crazy friend to other friends of mine, the reaction is visceral. It is, what the blankety blank? It is really bad, okay? So people, when they meet her, it's just like, oh, they can't believe that someone could actually be that offensive and that crazy, okay? But she's my crazy friend, right? That is the real estate appraisal profession. The way it's regulated, the way it's set up is the crazy friend. And when you get individuals that are not part of this organization, that are not part of this world, look into it. They're going to have the same reaction that most people have to my crazy friend. It's visceral. It's what the heck is going on, and how in the hell are we going to fix this right now? For the first time in a very, very long time, we've had outside eyes on the appraisal profession, which I think is great. I think it's good. I think it's about time that people look at this entire mess that the leadership and the powers that be have created since 1990, since FIREA. I think it's about time you take a deep dive on it and say, seriously, is this the path that we have moving forward? And I want you guys all to digest this throughout September. October, I'm going to be traveling. We will probably be back in, say, mid-October into November, okay? But like I said before, if you are slowing down and you need to show your pride for the appraisal waiver program, go on to www.voiceappraisal.com. Get on there and get you a hashtag I love appraisal waivers t-shirt. It'll make you feel so much better. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of our show. And as always, I would like to thank you for listening as we journey through the mysteries and complexities that are, in fact, the real estate appraisal business. I would like to thank my producer, Kevin Kinney, for being here for his thoughtful insights and knowledge. God willing, we're going to be back here very soon, continuing to report from the front lines of the real estate market. In the meantime, you kiss your spouse, you hug your children, enjoy your day, be safe in the field. You've been listening to Phil Crawford on Voice of Appraisal. We'll talk very soon.